It's literally tons of ice coming your way, and you have no chances of surviving that. There was a couple of Sherpas ahead of us. We looked at them. They went down on the ground. We didn't know, is that what you meant to do when avalanche strikes? I felt really sad and I felt heartbroken, but at the same time, it was mutual decision.
Hi, Marta. We finally
Hi,
made
Sarah.
it.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Nice to
Amazing.
see you.
I know you see the panic, the literal panic of going live and not wondering if it's going to work.
It's
Well,
working. I think it's
yeah,
working.
perfect. Thank you so much for joining, and also hi to everyone who is dialing in. Like, super excited to chat with Marta tonight, and we will try and keep it brief. But I personally have got so many questions for you, and I know other people have as well. So yeah, it will be recorded and shared, so we'll circle it around afterwards. But yeah, firstly, like for me, I've got a series of women I'm hosting this year to kind of explain a little bit more about what they do and share some incredible things about them. And you are the first person of this year kicking that off. And I just want to say thank you, because you are, I couldn't think of a better person to start with, like super iconic in what you've done and continue to do. And also, I think really important for sharing that message with other women looking to do something similar, or just generally like pushing boundaries and comfort zones, and sharing like the reality behind that.
Well, thank you for having me. I love the little intro. I'm excited to be the first one this year. Is it this year or overall in the whole series?
Overall,
Woo!
yeah. So I'd love to be as tech savvy and timely
You'll
with
get there.
organising a podcast, but this is where we're going to start, and then we'll see where we can build it from
Oh,
there.
I'm sure you're gonna
Um,
get there.
yeah.
Good
So
luck.
this is the first one, but yeah, thank you so much. I guess for people who maybe don't know you, or even for those that do, tell us a little bit about your background. I know why I've asked you here, but kind of why other people might be wondering why you're sat here.
I guess, well, I'm guessing I'm here because of the mountain adventure that I do. Last year I completed my seven summit challenge, Baz version. A seven summit challenge is basically the highest mountain on each of the seven continents. I did the Baz version. Um, and I'm also in the process of climbing the highest mountain in each European country. There are 50 countries, 48 peaks. I'm close to finishing, so that's something I do as well. So yeah, I'm a big hiker, probably mountain climber as well, but I don't like calling myself this way. I would say I'm just an adventurer. That's what it is.
Nice. And I think the big obvious one that everyone's going to want to hear about and talk about is Everest. And I know there's a lot of people who've got questions about that and just generally, but I think it'd be really interesting to understand how you even got into this space, how you've got to where you are now, where it all started. And yeah, anyone else who's kind of thinking, God, I could never do that. Was that once you? I guess
Oh
probably.
yeah, 100%. Actually, it was 12 years ago that I climbed Kilimanjaro. That was like my first altitude mountain. And I do remember going for the summit thinking, oh my God, people actually climb Everest. I'm not created for that, because I did struggle. I was so exhausted. Obviously, the altitude has this massive effect on your body, and you take each step and you think it's like a massive effort. And I thought, I would never climb Everest. I do remember that exact thought. And I thought, how can people do this? And then 12 years later, or 10 years later, because I climbed Everest 2 years ago, 3 years ago almost now. So I would never have thought that that would be me one day. But obviously, as you go sort of climb higher and more challenging mountain, you gain the confidence, you gain the skills, and you start realizing that climbing mountains is very much a mental struggle rather than physical. Physical, of course, it is, but you can overcome it, but it's very mental. And as a result, even someone like me at the time, being that very I still am a very average person. Yes, I do train a lot, so maybe I am fitter than most of the women my age, but that's because I train a lot. They could train as much as I do and do the same thing. But I was 100% that girl that you described. I did not think I would be able to climb Everest all those years ago when I started.
I think that's quite interesting because a lot of people say the opposite. Like they go into it and they're like, one day I'm going to climb Everest. Like that is doesn't matter what it takes, I'll be there. And you kind of went the other angle and was like, do you know what? I'll never make it. I have no idea how people do this. So I think it's really interesting that you ended up getting there. And I also feel like what you touched on about the mental resilience, I think it's hugely important because I've come from a similar place. I didn't enjoy moving. I didn't enjoy the outdoors. I felt super uncomfortable in that environment. And the mental resilience it builds you, like when you spend time in that environment and you realize you can achieve things you probably didn't think you could, I think you carry that through other areas of your life. And would you say that's probably been the same for you in terms of other things that you've approached?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, the more you climb, the more your perspective is changing, the more resilient you are. That's 100% true. Like just to give you another example, I climb Mont Blanc probably about 10 years ago, and at the time it was a massive challenge for me, and I climbed with a bunch of guys. I was the only woman in the group. There were six of us, and only three of us made it to the top, and one of us that made it to the summit, he was like, oh, one day I want to climb Matterhorn. And I thought, oh my God, Matterhorn is, that's for people that don't know, it's like very, very spiky mountain between Switzerland and Italy, and it appears incredibly technical. And when he said that, I thought, oh my God, that would never be me. Absolutely no chance. Whereas I climbed Matterhorn just after Everest. And when I went for Matterhorn, with the experience I had, so after climbing Everest and all the other mountains, I thought there's absolutely no chance I'm not going to make it, unless obviously the weather is going to not let me. But otherwise, there's just no chance. There's nothing that's going to stop me because my perspective has changed. So, yeah, you do start to have a different view on your skills and your abilities. You become more resilient 100% because every mountain that you climb, every challenge you take, it's really stepping outside of your comfort zone. And every time you step outside your comfort zone, that's when you grow. So, even when I climb Everest, first time I climbed Everest twice. First time I didn't get to the summit. We actually cancelled the summit push right before the night we were going to go for the summit push, and then the second time I got to the summit. So even the fact that we had to cancel the first expedition, that was a massive lesson for me, not to give up, just carry on trying and going for it. So every little thing that you face, pursuing those challenges, is really teaching you something and making you stronger. That's 100%.
Yeah, I think that's something as well that's to people who maybe haven't, and I speak from experience, I've not got a huge amount of experience in climbing big mountains. My only big peak I've done is the Matterhorn, and I was super lucky. I attempted it first time. We had no weather problems and we got to go. But I think the more you do, the more times you don't actually make those summits. The weather changes, or maybe you're not in the most physical fit condition you thought you were going to be in. So much plays into it that I think part of the resilience needs to be built for that prep stage. And I don't think people talk about that, especially with social media. It feels like everybody's climbing mountains or running, marathons and, ultra marathons. And the reality of it is so different. And I think not making Everest the first time and being able to go back and try again, that's like a huge thing. Like, how did that kind of weigh on you the first time you didn't? Was that the first summit you hadn't made? I mean, it's a huge one anyway, but how did that make you feel, and how did you kind of bring that back to try again?
I mean, it was heartbreaking for sure, because we all spent so much money, so much effort, so many months, if not years, of preparation. And for some people, it meant basically that's it. They will never go back. For me, at the time, it felt like it. So it was very heartbreaking. It wasn't the first mountain that I had to give up on. I had another two, I remember. I think another two, but obviously not that scale. One was the highest mountain in Andorra, and one was the highest mountain in Bulgaria that I had to give up on. But obviously it's not even comparable to Everest because of the amount of money and effort that goes into it. So at the time it felt really, I felt really sad and I felt heartbroken, but at the same time it was mutual decision, and I felt like it was a right decision because there were just so many factors that affected our decision, and we all kind of, or most of us at least, realized that it's the right thing to do. So it's almost like, well, you kind of angry that happened and heartbroken, but you know it's the right thing to do. And to be honest, if I had to make the same decision now, I probably would have made would I would make the same decision now, because I think at the end of the day, you have to be safe. You have to make sure everyone is safe, not just you, the Sherpas, the whole team, the guides. Everyone has to be safe. And if the conditions are changing, and I don't want to go into it too much, but like if it's obvious that it's a challenge in terms of the how much risk we're taking, it's not worth it. The mountain's always going to be there. You can always go back. And now knowing that I was able to go back, I would definitely make the same decision again.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's really interesting, and I think it's possibly the hardest call. I mean, sometimes it's not your call, often, it's your guides and who you're with, but it's a really tough one to make when you've worked so hard for something. So yeah, it's epic that you actually went back and redid it. So very, very, very excited for you. I guess so many people that haven't climbed it dying to know, like, the feeling, what's it like, you see it on movies, you read books, you listen to podcasts, you see pictures. I don't really think anything, I mean, I feel it with any mountain, nothing does it justice until you're actually on that summit or you've got that feeling. But yeah, if you had to quantify it, what's it like being up there?
Well, it's very surreal. I never kind of imagined I would be able to summit. Although, to be absolutely fair, um, I kind of knew I've got a huge chance to do it when I got to the last camp, to camp 4, because I kind of went from one extreme to the other. So in camp 3, I felt the worst I've ever felt in my life. Camp 3 is the second from the last. And then when I got to camp 4, I felt phenomenal, considering, and not as phenomenal as I feel right now in my warm place, but comparing to how I felt just a few hours before, I felt great. I actually ate an apple, which was amazing because I couldn't eat anything by then. And I felt strong and I felt good. I didn't really have like a headache or anything like that. And I kind of knew I've got a chance. Uh, but when I got to the top, it was just quite surreal. So obviously I was crying like a baby. I always cry. I always cry on those big mountains. I kind of had a tear even on Kilimanjaro, because I climbed Kilimanjaro second time just 2 weeks ago. And I thought I'm not going to cry because it's my second time and I kind of knew I'm going to make it. Unless obviously the weather, but otherwise I knew my body enough that I knew I can make it. But I did have a tear even on Kilimanjaro. But anyway, so I get to the top, I always cry, but the joy is not really there yet as such. The real joy is when you come back to the safe place. And so my favorite moment is the day after the summit, because that's when I got to base camp. So it takes 2 days to get back from the summit. So on the second day, when I got to base camp, when I knew I'm safe, I got to our communal tent and there was music playing. I got handed a beer, and the first song that played was "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," and it was a great song. I will remember that for the rest of my life. And that moment with me with a beer in my hand, that was the most beautiful moment of my life. Better than being on the summit, because when you're on the summit, you know that you still have this long way to go back. And obviously if you are training for something as dangerous as Everest, you would have, well, you're probably expected to read a lot of books and watch documentaries, and you know that going back down is actually far more dangerous than going up, and most of the accidents happen on the way down because you're tired, and and you kind of know that you still have to go through the whole process, and you've got this massive Kumbo icefall, which is like the most dangerous part of Everest that you have to pass. And so you can't really relax until you get to base camp, and that's when the joy starts. You start feeling that joy.
Yeah, no, I like I said, that I can relate to that, just in that exactly for me when I climbed the Matterhorn, I didn't feel, or it didn't feel much at the top. I felt great. It was just lovely. I just was taking it all in. It felt like, a nice day out. And then I very quickly got home because we had to rush back. We extended our stay. I was with my dad, and he went off. He carried on his trip, so I came home alone. And I just got home and sobbed, like uncontrollably crying for no reason, because you're just in go mode, right? When you're in these trips, you've trained for so long, your mind is just there. So I can completely resonate with that feeling of like your emotion doesn't really, you don't allow yourself the joy until you've actually got down safely, you've achieved it, and actually it hits you of like, God, what just happened? And I can only imagine the scale of that when you've come down from Everest and you're alive and you'll be in one piece and you're like, I've just bloody did that. Like, it was pretty epic. So yeah, I
Yeah,
think
100%.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's
And
quite common.
yeah, I think so as well. I think the emotion behind it is something that it's so hard to fathom and like to talk about. But for having done so many, I think people probably assume you don't still feel that. But I can imagine it's still a very big part of it from every
Yeah,
summit
well,
that you
I
make.
thought I wouldn't feel this way anymore, but as I said, I got to top of Kilimanjaro, and I did have a little tear. It wasn't the same sort of cry
Mm.
like on Everest or Kilimanjaro all those 12 years ago that I climbed, when I climbed it first time. But I did have a tear. I did have a little cry for sure.
Yeah. And what's been, I guess, your most frightening moment? Any close calls? Well, you've been up a lot of mountains, I'm sure there've been a few, but anything that really stands out?
Yeah, there is this one part. Well, there's a few, but one kind of stuck with me for for the longest. Still kind of thinking about it sometimes. That was first time when we climbed Everest. We were in the middle of Kumbu Icefall, which is again this most difficult and most dangerous part of Everest, where you have those big chunks of ice all over you. There's like gaps called crevasses, big gaps in the ice, like the 100 feet deep that you can just fall into and die, and those big chunks can just collapse on you. So we were walking through that in the middle of the night. It was pitch black. We had those little torches on our heads. You can't see much with them anyway. All of a sudden we could hear this massive bang, and it's like a sound of like a storm, like a thunder thing just coming your way. It's an avalanche. And that was the scariest part of my life. And we didn't know what to do. No one knew what to do. We looked at our guide. He looked at us. We looked at there was a couple of Sherpas ahead of us. We looked at them. They went down on the ground. We didn't know, is that what you meant to do when avalanche strikes? You don't know. Like there's just nothing you can do really, because when you think about it, it's literally tons of ice coming your way, and you have no chances of surviving that. So it was just coming close and closer. We look up and just kind of try to sort of see where exactly it's going, and then all of a sudden we got hit by this massive cloud of snow. So we didn't get hit by avalanche itself, but when you have avalanche, there's this massive impact, and then around it there is this cloud of snow. So we only got hit by that, and the avalanche just passed next to us. So we were very, very lucky. But right before that, we literally just looked at each other, and it was like kind of it was nice to know you, because we were convinced that's it. And as the clouds sort of hit us, we just turned back, and we got hit by that cloud covered in snow, but it wasn't an impact. So luckily nothing happened. But the moment that happened, we were like, right, let's just get out of here. We didn't want to be there, but like you're in the middle of that corpse, you know, Kumba icefall, it's scary. So you just want to just go, and you don't want to stand, don't want to hang, you don't want to stop for breaks. You just want to leave. That was the scariest moment. I had a few other ones, but that's like the scariest.
And that was the first time you climbed Everest, and
Yeah.
you didn't. So going back the second time after that had happened, was there a real fear there, or did you kind of feel like, no, it's all right, we survived the first time, we've got this again? Or was it a real moment of like, okay, I've got to go and put myself through that again?
No, I was quite anxious about this, but what helped me mentally was that we went a little bit like through Kumba Icefall during the day, and you kind of get this peace of mind that, okay, well, I can see this is here, this is there, and you kind of explain to yourself that, okay, if this falls, this is gonna fall here, if this falls, this is gonna fall here. It's absolute bullshit. If it falls on you. But you know, mentally you think like, well, I've got a chance if that falls, I've got a chance if that falls, and somehow mentally you feel better. So the fact that we went throughout Kumbai a little bit just for like a little training during the day, it's massively helped me, because then I knew that, okay, at least until that point I felt safe during the day. Now it's dark, so I can't see anything, but I kind of know where I am, so I feel safe. So although it was irrational thinking that you're safe, but it definitely helped me mentally.
Yeah. And you've got, I mean, you've got to tell yourself the narrative, you've got to tell yourself to get through some of those challenges for sure. And I feel like that's something that, again, people possibly underestimate, that every time you step foot into that environment, whether it's Everest or it's another peak, you are always, no matter how much safety and preparation you do, putting your life at risk essentially. And I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's possibly an element of it that stops people from doing it, but also is an element that maybe some people, if they've not experienced any close calls, don't really go in with an open mind. Like, there is a chance you don't come back, particularly on those big expeditions like Everest. Like, do you have to not think like that when you go in, or do you have to level yourself and say, no, there is a real possibility here? Like, I have to know that that's always an option.
I think some different people choose different thinking. I don't like not thinking about this, because I think if you don't think about this, you're not gonna make a rational decision. So if you are thinking about it, then at least you can make a call. Is this risk something that is worth taking, or am I being silly and just kind of blocking that this can happen and just going for it? I think I'm not a fan of that approach, but I know some people think this way. I would rather think, okay, it might happen. Is it worth it? If it is, then I'm gonna go for it. If it's not, then I'm not gonna go for it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And okay, we've talked scary moments, but what's been your best moment? And hopefully it's something different. Maybe it's still Everest, but what's been your highlight? Either your best peak or even just your best trip, anything like that?
Oh, 100% is going to be Everest. I mean, I don't know if anything can beat Everest, because it's such a special moment and such a special mountain. Of course, I liked other mountains. I loved Antarctica, for example, because Antarctica is very unique and there's not many people that go there. But Everest is still Everest. But if, like, apart from Everest, I probably would say my second favorite would be Antarctica. just just the place, really, not necessarily the mountain itself. I mean, the mountains, yeah, great, but just being in Antarctica, experiencing the whole thing, it was phenomenal. I think things have changed now slightly, so you fly there like you fly to any other place, whereas I did it in 2019, and back then you had to fly with a cargo plane. Like, even that was just so unusual. Like, you go to a plane, there's like a massive crane at the back, you're sitting next to it, it's loud, it's not like a normal, sitting arrangement. You've got seats, but like there's no window, there's just one window on the left, one window on the right, there's nothing else. There's no fancy sort of beautiful ceiling and lights, and then it is literally like wires are hanging above you, just swinging, and the massive cargo is just like attached to the back, and you see everything. It's just that experience itself is so phenomenal. It just feels like wow, you
Yeah.
land on the massive piece of ice, and it's just such a great experience because it's just so
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah, of course. And I guess obviously I know we've talked Shrekhorn, which I will hopefully get dragged up with you at some point, but I don't know if I'll be able to keep up with you. But the big one for this year for you, obviously I know you've got your sights on K2.
Yes.
How's that going? Tell us more about it. How do you feel? And I guess for people who maybe don't know, Everest is talked about a lot. People hear about K2, but what's the difference? What are the bigger challenges? Because obviously there's a lot of talk that K2 is a lot more difficult. How are you approaching it, and when are you hoping to do it?
So yeah, I do want to try K2. K2 is more difficult, more dangerous. But the thing is, so I climbed not long ago. I climbed Amadablam. Amadablam is very technical. It's a mountain just next to Everest. It's very steep, and there's a lot of kind of climbing of vertical walls. And I kind of realized that the technicality has always been my, let's just say, strong side. It's never been a challenge for me as such. What's challenging is when you go to the tent and like, how are you going to sleep? Are you going to eat? If you will you be able to keep it? Will you vomit? Will you not? Will you be able to drink without vomiting? That's the biggest challenge, to survive the night. And that's because of the altitude. And so whether you are on technical mountain or not technical, that's still the biggest challenge, because on Amadablam, the technical part, yes, it is a technical mountain, but that's just like, okay, I felt okay with that. What I didn't feel okay with it was the altitude. And again, that's, you know, whether it's Everest, whether it's K2, it's still gonna be this massive challenge, right? And so that's why I'm not too worried about the fact that K2 is more technical. It is more dangerous also because of the rock falls and because of this massive serac that can collapse. But I know if I don't go for it, I will regret for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be thinking about it. Why didn't I do it when I was still young-ish and able? So that's why I decided to go for it. Of course, I'm saying I'm going for it, but you know, I'm still working towards it because K2 is even more expensive than Everest. And you know, financially it's a massive challenge as well. I can see some people keep on writing in the comments about the whole money issue. So that's a challenge for me as well. Of course, you know,
Yeah.
it's not like I can just whip enough money to go and climb it. So I'm still working on it.
And
I'm kind of
out of interest, you were just going to say, how much is it? Because I think a lot of people don't know how much it is. Like you have to actually raise for either Everest or K2.
So I think, I mean, obviously it depends who you're going with. The price range, I think at the moment, I don't know if that's still the case this year, but until not long ago, the minimum that the company was able to charge for Everest was $35,000. But that's on top of it, you need to, you know, include the cost of flights, the cost of insurance, the cost of hotels before and after, the cost of tips for the share pass, uh, gear, you know, so it probably is at least $50,000 minimum. But personally, I would never go for minimum. I would say if you don't go for, let's just say, $70,000, then I wouldn't go with anyone cheaper than that. Because the cheaper the company, the less support you get. And fair enough, a lot of the times that support might be like, you know, oh, what's going to happen, and nothing's going to happen, whatever. A lot of people think this way. So when I say support, it's the number of Sherpa you get and the number of oxygens you get. That's the biggest difference. So yes, so there are obviously people that summited, nothing happened, happy days. But the moment something happens, that's when that extra oxygen or that extra Sherpa can actually save your life. And so I would never go with the cheapest companies, but I would rather not go, or go a couple of years later, spend a couple of more years saving the money, than going with the cheapest. But obviously, that's everyone's call. It's not, for me to say what's right, what's wrong. K2 is probably about, I'm just guessing, $10,000 more, if not more. So yeah, and again, it depends which company you go with, but it's a lot of money.
Yeah, of course. You've got to really love it to want to invest it. But obviously, you've done it for a long time now, and you've achieved some incredible things. I guess also the question you raised, obviously, you mentioned about altitude, which is one thing, and then you obviously mentioned about technicalities. You can train for the technical side of things. There's so much you can do, like the heap of training available now, both indoor and outdoor, from a technical climbing perspective and training climbs. But how do you factor in all of that training into your day-to-day life? And also, how do you train for the altitude? Because there's a certain amount you can do, but I know from what people have said, and I'd be really interested to hear your views on it, is sometimes it can affect you, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You can have trained and trained, but if that day it's not working for you, it's not working. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about how you train and prepare in both respects.
So in terms of training for altitude, I mean, there is nothing you can do unless you are in the mountains and you spend enough time on the mountain and get your body acclimatized. But obviously, if you spend some time in the mountains, you're acclimatized, then you come back to sea level and spend some time, then you're losing it. But it's meant to be easier once you have more experience because your body trains for whatever. I don't know if that's the case, to be honest. After going for Kilimanjaro second time and knowing how I felt, comparing to how I felt 12 years ago, I would say altitude-wise, no difference. Same shit. I felt terrible. I had a headache. I couldn't eat. Physically, I felt so much better. To be honest, it's gonna sound maybe a bit bad, but I didn't feel like physically Kilimanjaro was that challenging. I felt like just another hike. But altitude wise, 100%, I felt it. I felt very nauseous. I felt sleepy. That's also lack of oxygen. I had a massive headache. So altitude wise, 100%, I felt just as bad as all those years ago, if not worse.
And for people who don't necessarily know the difference in the heights of these mountains, how is Kilimanjaro in comparison to Everest, in comparison to K2? And again, how are you feeling about the effects of the altitude if you're going for K2 this year?
Obviously Everest is the highest mountain in the world. 8848 is meters is the height. Kilimanjaro is 5895. So it doesn't seem like it's only like less than 3 kilometers higher. So it doesn't seem that much. But the thing you have to understand is to get from 4,000 meters to 5,000 meters is so much easier than to get from 5,000 to 6, or from 6 to 7, or from 7 to 8, and so on. So the higher you get, the harder it gets. So yes, so I think Everest will be comparable. K2 and Everest will be comparable. There's only like less than 200 meters difference between them. Kilimanjaro is quite tough when it comes to altitude because you go high quite quickly. So Kilimanjaro is similar to Everest base camp, a little bit higher, but you take far longer to get to base camp, which means your body can acclimatize, so you don't feel the altitude as much as you do on Kilimanjaro. So that's why Kilimanjaro is quite tough when it comes to altitude, because it's just, you gain so much altitude so quickly and you just not acclimatize. Was that the question?
Yeah, no, it's just to give people context of the height and stuff. And I think what you said as well about that, every 1,000 meters you get, that air gets in it and it gets harder. And what tends to happen as well is that the climb gets harder as well. So not only are you battling the facts of the altitude, you're also then probably facing the more technical and more dangerous parts of the climb as well. So I'm sure that's a real kind of balance. Someone's just asked the question, what's harder to go up or come down? I mean, I think you touched on it before. The coming down is super dangerous, right? Like there's so many accidents that happen. But I guess from a physical point of view, what would you say is harder, or from both, I guess?
Well, for me, it's much harder to go up, obviously, because it's like, it's you go up, you're tired. Some people say it's easier for them to go down. I can never believe that. Or unless someone is not technically able, and yes, going down is like if you climb something very vertical, and you like even climbing a tree, like how many times you see a kid climbing a tree and then they can't come back down because it's harder. So if you're not capable, like physically, sorry, technically maybe not capable or whatever, then maybe you find it so stressful that maybe it's going down is harder. But otherwise, I mean, physically it should be easier, right?
Yeah.
It's not easier in terms of, avoiding accidents 100%, but like body wise, like, how fit you have to, like, you don't feel the exertion,
Yeah,
what's the word,
exertion. Yeah.
yeah, you
Yeah.
don't feel it because you go down, your heart rate is not as high, you're obviously not you're not sweating as much because you don't put as much effort, but yeah, it's definitely more scary because you can trip easier, you're more tired and things like that. So I would say it is definitely scarier. It's trickier for sure. But is it really harder? I don't know. I think when people say it's harder, I feel like they're talking about the fact that it's more
Yeah.
dangerous, and that's what they mean, I
Yeah.
think.
I get that. And do you have any, I guess it applies to in the mountains and when you're heading for a big peak, but also generally, I think everyone's got their own little rituals and ways that they deal with stress and kind of anxiety around going into a situation that they feel a little bit unsure about. Do you have any routines, I guess, traditions or little superstitions, or any just methods that you use going into these things?
No, I don't. So I'm not religious and I'm not spiritual and I don't have any of that. I obviously participate in any uh, sort of ritual, whatever it is in a given country, out of curiosity and respect. Um, and just to learn really about the culture you climbing in. But personally, I'm not a religious person and I'm not a spiritual person, and so I don't have anything like, oh, touch wood. I'm not
Yeah.
superstitious either. I don't do any of those, which maybe I feel like it helps me mentally because I don't read into, oh, this is a sign. Look, there's no sign for me. It's like if there is a bad weather, I'm not going. There's no sign tells me that I should go. I just purely look at facts and make decisions based on facts rather than things that might not necessarily be factual but like more
Yeah.
spiritual. So I feel like it helps me, but of course I wear, even till now I wear things that I got from Everest, part of the ritual, and that's from Amadablam. I still wear it, but obviously I wear it because I love it. I love that it reminds me of Everest, and that's why I have it, rather than for any
Yeah.
spiritual reasons. So
So there
I
wouldn't
don't have
be
any.
there wouldn't be a part of you, say that you lost those bracelets before you went on your next summit, that would be like, oh God, I can't, there's nothing like, because a lot of, in the mountains particularly, it's really common, people have these like little routines or superstitions that they have to go through mentally and physically before they even set foot on that mountain, because they just need to get their head in that kind of space.
Yeah,
So it's quite interesting that you
I think
don't.
it's quite common. Yeah, I don't think my approach is very popular, and I tend not to talk about it because I don't want to tell someone, like, if someone loses something, or they say I shouldn't be going because I lost
Yeah.
something. Like, no, you shouldn't be going because you lost something that you needed for the summit, like gloves. Then don't go, not because you lost a
Your
photo
bracelet or
of
your
your bracelet,
yeah.
so I'm not like that. I don't believe in those things, but I don't talk about it normally on the mountain because you know, if someone believes it, I think it can help them, you
Yeah.
know, knowing that something should be the way it is or whatever. And I'm not there to, you know, change their mind or tell them they should change their thinking. It's not my business really. I kind of, you know, as long as someone is rational, you know, then why would I change their thinking? I can talk about it outside of the mountains, which I do, and yeah, but I don't normally talk about it on the mountain. If someone says like, you know, oh, the mountain is this or that, I respect that, and I don't tell them otherwise.
Yeah.
But I
I think
don't have any, you know, oh, I have to put my left shoe first and then the right one, or touch something before, drink this before.
yeah.
If I do have something, it would be more of a rational thing than anything else. I don't know. I know in the morning I have to eat certain things because they work for me, but that's
Yeah.
based on the natural kind of observation about my body. Or like I know I have to pack ahead, but I don't pack ahead for good luck. I pack ahead because I
Because
don't
you
want to be
need to.
anxious in the morning, you know. So I have certain things, but they purely based on my own experience and how I work and how I, you know, how my brain works rather than superstitious beliefs.
Yeah, and I think it's so right and fair for you to say, you know, you don't pass judgment on anyone else's rituals, particularly as we said earlier, like it's such a mental game. Like being mentally strong for the mountains is as important as being physically strong, if not more important. And if those habits or little traditions or things that give people that mental strength, like that's
Yeah,
super important
100%.
to them. Yeah,
Yeah,
you'd rather be safe with
exactly.
them, yeah, on the
I love
mountain.
how you put it. You put it way better than I did. But exactly, that's
No, but
exactly
yeah,
what I
it's
meant.
it is so true, and I
Yeah,
think that's yeah. So I guess as well for anyone who's kind of watching and thinking like this is a world away from what I could ever do. Like I never. Where did it start? Other than the fact that you suddenly just one day was like, I'm going to climb Kilimanjaro. Like did you ever think I'm going to start there and carry on? Or even when you climbed Kilimanjaro, was it just a tick box and you thought you'd carry on with everyday life after that? Like how did it all evolve like to from there to now, like so much you've achieved and so much more you still want to achieve? Tell us, like, if anyone's thinking, God, where do I begin, or I could never get to that point, what would you say?
so I would say going gradual is definitely something I would recommend, and I would say take your time as well, because imagine if, let's just say there's a list of 10 mountains that you should climb before Everest. Uh, Climbing those 10 mountains in a space of 10 years is, I personally think, more beneficial than climbing those 10 mountains in the space of 1 year. And the reason is, if you do it in 1 year, you kind of think, well, I've got the same experience as the other person who's been doing it for 10 years. But the reason here is, if you're doing it for that long, that means you follow things, you watch stories, you watch accidents, you learn from accidents. You've got plenty of time to read books, watch interviews, watch documentaries. You learn. And if you do it bang, 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 you don't even have time to think about your own mistakes, your own sort of strengths, or what things that you have to work on, because you just do it automatically one after the next one. Whereas if you allow some times in between and space it up, uh, yes, physically it might be harder because every time you go climb and then you come back and you don't do any climbing in between, and then you have to start again. Physically might be more challenging. But I think it's safer, and I kind of like the way it happened for me. It happened for me over a long period of time, and I always sort of allow myself, like, you know, some time to things to think about certain things and how I would do it differently, and, you know, think about my gear, how would I would change it, how would I change my training. You asked me about training earlier. I don't think I actually replied to that. You know, how do you train for such a big mountain while you have a corporate job that I have? A lot of people think that I just do content creation full time. I don't. I do have I have two jobs, I say, because obviously the content creation is a side hustle for me, but I do have a normal job Monday to Friday, and that obviously allows me to save because I've got a normal job plus the content creation side hustle. Uh, so it's hard to train when you are that busy. But what I did, I changed my social interaction into anything to do with training. So I don't really socialize for coffee or lunch. If someone says, let's go for a coffee, absolutely no fucking chance. I do not have time for that.
As
If
someone
some,
who loves going for a coffee as
I
well,
do not do that.
It's a good job I like going up mountains, isn't it? Because otherwise we'd never see each other.
Oh my God. I'm telling you now, if you invite me for lunch, there's no fucking chance I'm gonna go. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
If you invite me for lunch, I'm gonna bring 10 people with me because at least I can do 10 people at once and that's
Yeah.
it. Otherwise, there's absolutely no chance I'm gonna do it because I have no time for that.
Yeah.
But I do have time to go and climb mountains. So if you want to come and join me,
Yeah.
that's fine. And that's basically what saves a lot of time for me. So I still socialize, I would say, quite a lot. But that's, first of all, when I do socialize, I invite everyone because at least, you know, I can see a lot of people. So a lot of my friends, when they see me, it's usually like there's loads of people at the same time. I don't tend to see a friend, you know, because I just don't have time for that. And if it's a friend, just one, then we probably go and climb mountain. That's what it is. And so that helps me a lot. And then also I think you can use the commuting to work, you can use that as a training as well. So when I train for Everest, and now I'll have to start doing that as well, I run back from work quite often. For me, it's about half a marathon to run from work. But I mean, I'm not wasting my time. Well, I'm wasting a little bit of time because I'm obviously slower than a train. But
Probably only just a little bit
just a
slow.
little bit, you know, on a good day, not even. But
Exactly.
anyway, so I would run home, and that means I get home. Yes, I would waste an hour extra, but that means I don't have to go to the gym. I don't have to you know, have additional shower because I have to shower anyway when I get home, whether I run or I don't. So I kind of save a lot of time and money as well when you think about it. So I would do that a lot, and yeah, so no socializing unless it's like a training socializing. So climbing a mountain, going on a bike ride, then yes. Otherwise, no chance.
I think
There's an
people
exception. There's an exception to that. I do go for Thursday
are
drinks
like
sometimes,
that.
but
You've got to have that let go, yeah. And
that's
I think
after work. That's after work, and I just kind of need to, you know, unwind. But yeah, it's still not happening very often. If I train, very often people go for the Thursday drinks, and I just go up and down the stairs with a big backpack and training. And it happened for Everest. It was just kind of sad because I like the Thursday drinks. Everyone, all my friends are going, and I'm like up and down the
no.
mountain, the building, you know.
People, I think, underestimate the level of dedication it takes. And I think you touched on it before about taking your time over the 10 years to experience the climbs, to not just climb 10 mountains and tick them off, to take the time to see the effects of, like you say, accidents or learnings. And I think social media has made that worse because we all want to achieve everything straight away, whether it's climbing
Mm.
mountains or just generally. And I think it's such a pivotal point that you've made to say, like, take your time, and also don't underestimate, like, you don't just see somebody, like you mentioned Ahmed Ablan before, that's become quite popular on social media. And I think the it's wonderful. I love seeing it. Like, for me, seeing so many people going and climbing mountains is epic, but I think it's giving people a bit of a notion of like, oh well, you know, we'll just give that a go, or we'll just, and without the real thought of like the danger, the training and the dedication. Like you say, you give up a lot of your life to do that. You've got to really love it, and you've got to take the time to respect it and do it properly, because I think we're at a point of, we're at danger of it becoming the norm, where people go and climb these 8,000 meter peaks, and it is so not the norm. Like,
I
it is
know.
so
To be
far
honest,
from the norm.
to be honest, it kind of annoys me as well. I think there's a lot of trolls on internet, and they either trolls or a lot of insecure people. And if they are insecure, they will try to trash you on the internet. And very often they will say things like, "Oh, Climbing Everest is so easy these days. The problem is like it's honestly it does not bother me. They can say whatever they want. It works great for my algorithm. So please go ahead and do it.
Carry on.
However, the problem is young kids are reading this and they say like, "Oh, I'm gonna climb a mountain," and that's the problem because then they think like they can go off the street, climb a mountain, and that's not right. They should be ready for it, to have enough experience, go slowly, gradually, not just from doing nothing to Everest. But if you put comments like this, those young people that are very often more naive, because that's what it is, right? The older you get, the less naive you are, or at least you should be. um, Young kids are reading this, and it can be dangerous. So it's kind of annoying that people are so irresponsible and put comments like this, that climbing Everest is walking in the park. Absolute nonsense. The fact that it's easier to climb Everest than it was 50, 70 years ago when it was first climbed. Uh, it is definitely easier, but that doesn't mean it's easy. People are still dying. Everyone, well, Sherpas are dying, and Sherpas are the most strongest people in the climbing community. You can't find any stronger people than Sherpas, and they die. And it's such a dangerous hobby, that just to say that, oh, it's a walk in the park, it's so wrong. It's such a wrong message to send to young people. Like obviously, adults is gonna read it, it's like, of course it's not, whatever. If you're sensible, you're gonna understand this is just someone being insecure, they're trying to whatever criticize you. But young people, they're not going to think that. They will just say, oh, I'm going to do it as well then.
And not understand, it's not just even the physical task of climbing it, which isn't easy regardless. It's exactly what you touched on that first time, when you hit a situation where something is so out of your control, and so common on a mountain like that. Like you're not safe, and that's completely out of your control, even when you have been dedicated and trained. And I
Yeah,
think that are the bits that get missed and don't get talked about enough, when people just think, well, we'll give it a go. And that I mean, we connected through your friend on social media, but social media is amazing. It's so powerful for showing these things, but it doesn't always show it accurately. And that's why I was so interested to talk to you, because I think it's super important that we're telling people, like, honestly, go and climb. If you want to climb a mountain, I promise you can do it, but do it in a way that is actually safe, and also put the dedication and the training in if you are going to do it properly and do it seriously. And there's getting that balance, I think, is quite tough.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. Completely
yeah, I
agree. I
definitely
like how
do.
you phrase it. I might
Yeah.
steal that from you.
I have just got a couple of questions that people have put in just as we've been
Yeah.
talking. So if anyone else has got them, pop them in rather than in the chat, put them on the Q&A. One person has asked, how do you manage acute mountain sickness during your treks? Do you take any medications or follow any particular precautions? I know we touched on altitude sickness, but is there anything you do, or do you just wait it out?
Well, I just crack on, to be honest. Unfortunately, the good thing for me, like I'm lucky that I do have stamina, and I think obviously it's probably the years of training that I've done, that I know I can carry on, even if the first thing that I feel is the headache, and then nausea. I can't eat because I feel like I'm gonna puke. I can't even brush my teeth because I'm gonna puke just brushing my teeth. So that's kind of my first thing. And luckily for me, I know I can still carry on surprisingly far, even if I don't eat. Um, so I don't tend to take anything. Having said that, I have taken in the past, like, and I remember in Antarctica, I took Diamox on the way down. The reason why I don't like taking so there's a medication called Diamox that you can take that helps you with altitude. But the reason why I don't like it is that it hides your symptoms. So if it hides your symptoms, you kind of don't know where you are. Like whatever is happening, the bad stuff that is happening in your body is still happening. You just don't see it. So obviously, Diamox can help, but it doesn't cure you. So once you reach that help, as much as Diamox can help you, it can go from feeling good to extremely bad so quickly. Whereas if I feel worse and worse and worse, at least I know where I am, And if I have to just pull out because it's too bad, then at least I know and I can just say, you know what, that's it for me. I can't, I don't want to risk it.
Yeah.
Whereas with Diamox, you might feel great, and all of a sudden, boom, you've got, you go to such extreme that it might be too late. So that's why I don't like it. But if I was to climb something, I don't know, small, that like on Antarctica, I was already down. I had a headache. My guide was like, just take it. You're not gonna, have a headache or whatever. So I did take it and actually helped me. I didn't have a headache after that. But, I knew that even if I hide my symptoms now, I'm safe. I'm back down. There's just no reason to suffer. But otherwise, I'm not too much of a fan of that.
Yeah, fair. Somebody else has asked, what mountains do you recommend climbing to prepare for Everest after climbing Kilimanjaro?
So I would say, well, Aconcagua is great because it tests your reaction to altitude. It's almost 7,000 meters, and it's still not technical, so it's kind of nice and easy. Let's just say, well, easy when it comes to like technical. And so I would definitely say try that, and don't take anything, like no Diamox, nothing. Just go for it and see how your body reacts on it. So Aconcagua is definitely a nice one. I would say Denali is also a good one, just because Denali is very technically demanding. You have to carry almost 60 kilograms. Half of it you carry on a backpack. In a backpack, the other half you pull on a sled. You obviously don't carry that the whole time. There's only like one stretch that you carry that much, but it's very physical, and again, that's like testing you how physical you are, and whether you can train for something as difficult, and it also is like a nice test, how your body reacts to like the cold. Can you deal with that? Denali is extremely cold. It's in Alaska, and I would say these two are 100% good tests for Everest. So in a way, like if you have those two, you maybe have a potential that it's going to work. I think we might have only 1 minute left, by the way,
Yeah, I
because
think
I
we
think
do. I
there's,
think we might get cut short. I don't, does it get cut off after 1 minute? I'm not entirely
I
sure what
think it
happens.
might do.
We might, so if it all goes quiet, guys, then we're done. But yeah, I'll obviously share this afterwards. Thank you so much for joining us, and obviously so many more questions that I want to ask, and other people I'm sure want to ask. So we'll share it around. If you've got more questions for Marta, obviously submit them. This won't be the last time. Hopefully you'll see us both on top of a mountain somewhere, or more likely Marta at the top and me lagging very slowly behind. But yeah, it's been epic speaking, and yeah, you're a huge inspiration. I know a lot of people will have taken a lot from this. So
Oh,
yeah, just
thank you.
super good to chat, and yeah, we'll see each other very soon, I'm sure.
Thank you so much, and good luck with your interviews with the other amazing ladies. I'm going to be looking out for that, so I
Awesome.
can't wait to see it.
Yeah, well, they've got a lot to live up to now. We've started on a high, so yeah, thank you so much. All
I'll see
right,
you on the
guys,
mountain. Oh,
bye.
snowboarding.
Oh yes, definitely. See you soon, guys.
Bye.